Welcome back, my fellow agents. It is I, X7, your agent of Animated Awesome, and the host of Zenorama, the podcast of Heroes and Monsters, the co-host of GD Splanations. You should check that channel out on YouTube. It's full of interesting and awesome facts and fun. It's a lot of fun. Be that as it may, today is Monday. That means Animated Television Series Day. We have got the 8th episode of Kimba the White Lion. We're covering episodes 36 through 40. These were originally aired on Japanese television from June 8th, 1966 to July 6th, 1966, and then all over the place from January 67. Actually, these look like they were almost aired pretty much in order, assuming they were aired once a week. Now, I only in syndication, they were aired every day, 5 days a week, which was wonderful, which is why I got to see many of them. I don't remember any of these, seeing them originally. I didn't always get to watch it. I did my best. But these most of the images today came from the disc, the 8th disc from the set, the DVD set, released by, does this say who this was released by? Right Stuff. And it'd be nice if they put these out on Blu-ray, just because, it's Kimba, and it deserves to be remembered. Avenge my death, Kimba. I mean Simba. But they look great, and I used the cover there right here is from the DVD because it just worked out really well. So let's get into the episodes here. We're going to try not to make them take forever, but you know how things go, right? Right, a Rooney. All right, our first episode today is The Monster of Petrified Valley, which is a misnomer in all senses of the word. It's raining in Kimba's jungle kingdom. Polly has a cold, but Harley and Charlie Cheetah are rushing off to go visit the cursed monster of the Petrified Valley. So Kimba says, "I'd like to see that," but Polly wants him to go and rescue the animals. So off he does. There's a volcano. There's a couple more. There's another episode with more volcanoes in it coming up. So don't be surprised. Polly tells Dano what's going on. I wonder what these cakes that they're eating are. And Dano eats a lot of them. I mean, a lot. And there's a hedgehog who plays a role in here. And he shows up in another episode too, but I think he has two different names because, There, once again, the Petrified Valley has got an active volcano in it and mists, deadly gas mists, which are what causes the petrification. They think it's kind of a Medusa effect, but it's that when they see the monster, that he petrifies the animals, but he doesn't. They just fall. It's the gas that petrifies them. Kimba gets out and gets fresh air and then goes back in, and apparently it's all right then. But we are about to meet the monster, who turns out to be a toothed bird, a terror bird, aka a dinosaur, with a nice, mane of hair there. Gets his nose stuck in the rocks, which Kimba finds hilarious. But he frees him by dropping a big rock on him. Rescues Charlie and Harley. They're afraid that Colossal is the name of the dinosaur. He's called a Brodo bird, I just thought this was funny. I don't remember exactly what happened here. Both of them. But Kimba brings him back because he's lonely. So he brings him back to the kingdom. And, and then they go see Methuselah, that wise old something or another. He tells him the story of the Brodo birds who live in Madagascar, which during a storm, Madagascar got blown closer to Africa because that's how geography works. But so there's a whole race of these obvious dinosaurs. Look at the tails. And he said it was a long, back before when the world was young, but there were no tankers when the world was young. So they all ran to Africa, and now Colossal is the final one. Unfortunately, he's large, and they're not used to something that's, probably standing at least 12 feet tall, if not 15, and probably weighing a ton. And they call this Mrs. Chicken, but it sure looks like Henrietta Hen. Sometimes continuity was not the strongest suit, but Colossal loves flowers. He drools over them, so maybe he eats them. But he also likes to sing. Unfortunately, Bucky doesn't like him singing, and everyone has a problem with him. They were trying to make him a home, and he wasn't helping. He just wanted to sit there and sing. So they're angry. And he goes to eat, and that's where he meets the hedgehog, and he's heard that hedgehogs taste good, but in the history lesson we got from Methuselah, no, not from the space giants Methuselah, he says that the hedgehog fever is what killed all the Brodo birds. So off he goes, and he almost eats it, but he's got teeth. So he's like a diatryma or a Gastornis, a Phororhacus, or Phororhacus, depending on how you learn to say it. Big fight. Everyone fights, and Harley Hedgehog, I don't even remember his name now, but he doesn't want him to. Everyone wants him to go back to the Forbidden Valley or Petrified Valley, and finally says, "I'm causing too much trouble. I'll go," and he does. There's the baobab tree or whatever that was that Tusker was in. So there is continuity in the Japanese version. It's just not as, they just thought kids were watching these out of order. It wouldn't matter. So he goes back, and the valley gets sealed up, and they just leave him. So there we go. All right. So apparently Colossal is still alive since Dinosaur. Well, if he didn't have any competition and he was our herbivore, like most of the terror birds were now, they figure out they were not just chomping down on Homo sapiens or Cro-Magnon man or Neanderthals. Anyway, 37, The Legend of Hippo Valley. So, we're going to see a lot of hippos here, Lilith.
Who lives down in deepest darkest Africa? Who's the one who brought the jungle fame?
So here we have that we're in a drought again, and everyone's hot. They're trying to divert. This whole episode is about them trying to divert. You know what? I do think I saw this one growing up. I kind of remember it. This is their water delivery system, the pelicans, but it's just not enough. They're trying to divert the river in and somehow get it to water their crops. But they're tired. It's hot and they're tired. You can see this is Timmy Turtle or whatever, Nurgle the turtle. No, Nurgle was a turtle, bouncing around because Now the animals here look a bit off for all 5 of these episodes. Some of them look, and we'll see it later on, but their models seem off, like another studio was doing it. And I believe, if I remember my Markolite article, that Tezuka Productions did farm out some of the episodes, which is why we got animals that were not quite. Some episodes contradicted each other because they were writing as they went along. But be that as it may, these are just the plans, and Daniel's afraid because the hippos are there, and they beat up Dano, and he has to take him back. He confronts Boss Hippo, who says and he asks him, "None of my guys were there." But then and it turns out it was Tusker there. So I thought we met Tusker last week, didn't we? Clunker Hippo. That's Tusker, who I think was Boss Tusker. I don't even remember anymore. Anyway, but you can tell they're bosses because they always have these little mustaches. And there's Methuselah, yet again, 2 episodes in a row. And he says, "I'm going back to sleep. You caused this problem, fix it." He gives him the legend of Hippo Valley. Is that what this is? Yeah. And this is what happened. This hunter was thirsty, and he showed up, ran to get a drink of water, and the natives killed him. They don't say killed him, but you can kind of figure out. So the well dried up. The water gods the rain gods didn't show up, and so the natives had to leave. Bye-bye. And then an old hippo, and you can tell he's old because he's got a gray beard. We'll see that with an ostrich here too, which is hilarious. and the water came back. So he squirts the water god, and everything's happy. But uh, nobody wants to finish this because it's too hot. And Kitty arrives and yells at him, guilt trips them, and bosses them. Then and Kim was like, "Well, with Kitty here, I don't need your help." And the boys say, "No girl's gonna outdo me," and she's smart enough to realize she doesn't have to. So they're trying to dam up this side and make it flow in there, which the hippos don't like because the Hippo Valley is sacred to them. Tusker fights Boss Hippo and defeats him, leads the other hippos in a charge and a fight, and then Kitty fights, and she gets beat up, and then we find out that it's all a plot by Cassius and Claw, because he promised to Tusker that he'd be second in command, and of course lied to him. More fights, and then let's see what happened here. Oh, Claw gets mad because Kitty was fighting, and he thinks Kitty's his girlfriend because, well, what a fool believes, he perceives. So another fight here, and once again they claim it's going to be to the end. Fight once again, Claw gets thrown in the water and swept downstream. So you'd think he'd just find another jungle. Dodie is making sure, and the pelicans have brought water to Boss Hippo, who goes back and then he cracks open and the well starts again. So everyone gets water, and the crops are saved. Everyone helps replant everything. Happy day. Okay, we're cruising right through here now. Let's play a little more of the intro.
Who's the king of animals in Africa?
Bucky is taking the kids on a field trip, an overnight field trip to Volcano Island, because nothing could go wrong with with an island with that name now, could it? But the fish, he says the fish are little stinkers, and they are kind of mean at first, but Bucky wants to fish them out and probably fry them up. And the dubbing has him saying, "Now, why would I say such a terrible thing?" Well, because you'd lost your temper. It's okay. So then the animals decide to build a water park, and the fish become their friends. Everyone's happy. Tom and Tab show up for a brief cameo. They try to eat the fish, and Kimba scares them away. That's it. So I like this picture a lot, too. Then Boss Rhino shows up, and you can see he's got a little mustache with his cousin and his wife. They're going to have a little baby rhino, and the fish don't like it, but Kimba doesn't either, but he figures he can't fight Boss Rhino, even though he already has. And then they tell a story about this water dragon that this little fish here defeated by getting him stuck in, much like Colossal got stuck. This one gets his head stuck, which that could be a plesiosaur of some kind. So Kimba's realized what he has to do. So he and Boss have a fight, and they injure each other and decide, well, we'll continue this fight in a little while because we're both injured. But of course, the volcanoes go off. I like this picture a lot too. And they're like, "Save our baby, save our baby." So he does. And actually, they're having the baby. We're a little ahead. Sorry. There's the hedgehog who tells Daniel that there's two things you can do with a volcano. You can run before it erupts or run after it erupts. Fish leave. And Boss Rhino takes the baby and says, "Save yourselves if you can." And then it erupts. This is just really nice artwork here. The animals are pretty much on point here. So this episode, they look good. They look like themselves. Kimba builds a raft, tries to save the baby, but Boss says, go get his parents. So he does. Well, all this, I think they added some sound effects for the rocks falling, but until you see the actual Japanese episode, we'll never know. But he saves everybody. Super Lion to the rescue. Boss gets clonked in the head, and I thought he died, but he shows up, and there's a live action shot of smoke tinted red, and turns out that when the volcano blew up, it flooded the plain, or the area, so now everyone can go and play, including the baby rhino. And now Boss and Kimba are friends. He wants to take him back to the jungle, and he says, "I'll give you a ride." And Kimba's like, "No, I'll walk." That wasn't a request. And it goes back. So everyone's happy, and we're going to the episode that I don't care much. This was not one of my favorites. Running Wild here.
Kimba the White Lion is his name.
And he sleeps in the jungle.
When we get in trouble and we're in a fight.
So, but as the narrator says, Kimba instinctively knows, like a mother knows when something's wrong with their children. That something's up in the jungle. He runs off. They find a humongous herd of antelope, Bucky's cousins, ostensibly Dodie's cousins. They're just running wild, destroying crops. Bucky tries to stop them and fails, and then causes a rift between Bucky and Polly for about 10 seconds. Methuselah shows up again. I don't remember him showing up in any of the first, 35 episodes, but here he is twice. And this is the episode where they look odd. I mean, they look very cartoony, more so. There's just a funny sequence with that, with Bucky trying not to get trampled, but they're trying to rescue him, and they're frothing at the mouth. I think I don't know what's going on. They just the reason for the herd stampeding is left vague at best. But the moles rescue, and Kimba pushes a tree from underground. Super lion indeed. This is the antelope herd, or wildebeest, or whatever you want to call them, or gnu's. Maybe they're white-tailed gnu's. And I do know it's pronounced new, but blame the Muppets on that one. So Kimba just pushes the tree out to make him safe. Polly yells at him again. I'm surprised Polly didn't get smacked around a little more in this episode. But they're headed for the water, which is what happened. It's what Methuselah tells them, that they just run. They're like lemmings. They run over and die. So they're determined to stop and save them, even though it's such a giant herd that you'd think there's too many of them, and they were culling the herd, if you will, because the predators aren't eating them, because they're not from Kimba's jungle anyway. Kimba's crying because he can't figure out a way. He's whining and see, this is where they look weird. Daniel looks weird. Kimba looks weird. The fights even look weird with the wobbly eyes. And look at that. Nothing. I mean, so Kimba's decided to do something about it. He eats a bunch of these cakes again. Who knows? Apparently they don't fish anymore. They don't eat insects. And some of the antelope fall off the side of a cliff. You had to think they died because all the rocks fell on top of them. They the animals successfully build the wall. And if you've seen King Kong, you know this is just not going to end well either. They break right through. And see, this is all of the antelopes. And they're still headed, and they run over everybody, but they stop them. Somehow they get them to stop magically. And Daniel said, young Daniel, or Daniel boy, is what Methuselah calls him, and Kimba thinks that's really funny. But Daniel says, well, you saved almost all of them. Just a very few didn't make it. And a very few out of 1 million is probably, 1,000 or 10,000, which seems to be a lot to me. That I would think that animals that died, they would let the carnivores eat. But I'm thinking too much into a children's story. So Bucky has the antelopes come back and help replant the garden, gets hit in the head 3 times in a row with a rock. And everyone laughs at him. And that's the end, because there he is getting hit again, maybe 4 times. Bucky's not the smartest. So this last episode came from the downloads I got from the Internet Archive. And you'll see a difference in quality there. But the wolves are back. The troublemaker is this episode starts out with these wolves chasing a herd of wolves. They're like dingoes or hyenas, but they're chasing a herd of zebra. And they would not have chased the herd. They would have chased, caught the older ones and been done. But, we don't know if they ate all of them. The assumption is that they did, but yeah. So you can see the quality is not quite as good now. The first 2 screenshots came from the DVD, and then VLC player decided it didn't want to play. But they're out on another, overnight stay, and Bucky's taught them how to make house, which falls apart, and he's annoyed that they followed his instructions. Kimba makes a house without a door. I don't know who this dink is, but Kimba might have the artistic temperament, but he does not have the artistry to do whatever he's doing. Um, and so let's see. Oh, Benny Ostrich shows up, who likes to make art. Look what I did. Kimba takes a nap. Then everyone laughs at him, and then his uncle, Big Benny, shows up, and you can tell he's an old ostrich because he's got a beard. And he doesn't like little Benny playing with Kimba, but you know how this will always end. Everyone gets seconds, but Kimba only gets 2 cakes. I would assume this is the meat substitute from the previous one. Benny keeps coming back despite his uncle's wishes, and Kimba's being punished. And then and Benny's like, "I'll call my uncle." So he's like this, the little yappy dog who's got the big friend who will help him out, or his uncle's the bruiser. So the kids are watching the big ostriches battle or spar or whatever, and sprains his ankle. Big Benny says, "You haven't sprained your ankle." Then Blabs, Dot or Dash blabs, and off he goes to get Benny, who's, I don't know what happened there. They thought he was eaten, and then the dogs, the hyenas or the dogs or whatever, the wolves show up and fighting. Bolly is useless. He was supposed to go get help, and mouths off just one too many times, but you know manages to get a jackpot on this one hyena. And comes back and says, that help I was going for, it's not coming. Then Benny goes and gets his uncle, and they play with the wolves. Everyone's friends again. Benny's going to go to school with Kimba and everyone else. Off they go, and that's it. There's our voice credits and an NBC Enterprises presentation. All right, my fellow agents, we'll just listen to the end here.
Who's the one who just won't turn and run? Who believes in doing good and doing right? Kimba the White Lion is the one.
All right, I will include the opening credits for us because they're fun. And we'll just go from there. Yeah. All right. But be that as it may, I do need to change this up a little bit. I've had it the same setup for, quite a while since I've been on YouTube, right? All right. Tomorrow, I think we'll be reviewing a Disney movie again, one with witches and magic and such. So, having said all that, until our next assignment, this is X7 signing off.
Who lives down in deepest, darkest Africa? Who's the one who brought the jungle fame? Who's the king of animals in Africa? Kimba the White Lion is his name. When we get in trouble and we're in a fight, who's the one who just won't turn and run? Who believes in doing good and doing right? Kimba the White Lion is the one.